Hello everyone. Very warm welcome to you for my latest in the Win at the Partner Growth Game series, which is Tip for Time for Lawyers. It's certainly also something which applies to other professionals. I'm just going to kick off with the main part of the presentation. Let's have a look. And when I refer to anecdotes, these will be anecdotes which have come up in my own experience working as a lawyer or as a coach, although I will disguise identities for obvious reasons when I talk about it. I had an interesting conversation with who had been made a partner. She moved to a new firm with a lot of experience in her specialist area of litigation, and her brief was to establish a litigation team in that specialist area. In her first 18 months, she did pretty well in it. She built a practice up for herself, and she had an associate working with her, and they were supported by a paralegal. But from her point of view, she was under a lot of pressure. She was doing a big part of the fee earning work. Although she had the support of the assistant, she had the responsibility for bringing the work in as well. They met all their billing targets and managed to service it, but they felt that they were under-resourced. And what was it that gave in this particular situation? Well, of course, as many of us have experienced, no doubt, in our careers, that it's the personal life which gets squeezed. And this expression really stuck in my mind. My time is not respected. And that was talking about the firm. She wasn't particularly complaining. She wasn't in a position where she was going to be pursuing a grievance, but she felt that the firm didn't really get it when it came to the understanding that the pressure she was under. But also from a commercial angle, they didn't really appreciate the risk that they faced as well, because if one of them went sick or burnt out, there would be a significant commercial impact on what was a pretty successful team within that firm. And so the problems faced are problems which law firms also have to consider to be problems of their own. And we're in this context of the rise, and it's both in the UK and in the States, people working for fee sharing type firms. I've recently actually joined one myself, Spencer West, where the flexibility is available for people, and people are doing it very often for lifestyle or win back their time types of reasons. So the traditional law firm has to bear in mind the importance of these issues. So that's Emma's story. Just a bit on my story, my background. Well, I was an employment lawyer for 25 years. Large and medium-sized firms. Then part of that experience was co-founding a firm which grew to about 50 strong, an employment law specialist, but we developed some other specialism as well. Of course, multiple responsibilities came with that job, and I did get close to burnout, I must admit, and I kept going using the drug of adrenaline. Later on, I discovered that there were techniques for managing my time and also my experience of time, which would have been really helpful for me earlier on in my career. When I left the firm that I co-founded, I went into coaching as my main activity, and now I have a mixture of coaching, law firm consultings, but I also have recently stepped back in to do some work as an employment lawyer as well. So I really know about the experience of lawyers in relation to the pressurized environment that they're working in. So that's my background. I'm just going to ask my assistant at this point to put in a polling exercise to hear what your perception is about time. I'm going to end the poll now and share the results here, so you can see that most of you feeling that you're chasing your tail is the commonest experience. And yes, one of us feels in control, 1 out of 10, which probably reflects the experience that is a minority experience, if you like. I'm glad to say that nobody has opted for the last category, but there we are. That's where we are. So thinking about time, and I'm going to move on to look at the themes, some of the things that we'll talk about in terms of the themes that come up in practice. So the billable hour, of course, is central to the way that lawyers work. It's even going to be the case with a move towards alternative fee arrangements and fixed fees being more widespread, because it's very important for the firms to be able to assess the cost and efficiency of people working in them. So it's a pretty central theme still in our lives as lawyers. Multiple files, of course, is something that we all have to deal with. The long hours culture, dishonestly honest, well, you'll see what I mean about that. But in some ways, the relationship we have with ourselves about the time we work as lawyers is not always as frank and honest as it ought to be with ourselves and with other people. And one of the problems of the profession is that time and value are too closely tied up. And when we're thinking about what the value of the work we do, we often try and reduce it to time. And that's a big mistake in the way we run our practices. I've been asked the question by a law partner as to whether any other profession has the same expectations on its people in terms of multiple responsibilities. When you're a partner, a fee earner, a manager, a marketer, a financial target setter, part of a leadership team. They like you to be a member of communities, have impact outside of the firm as well. And then maybe tacked on the end of that, a wife, a husband, a mother, a father, a dog owner, or a friend. But maybe the number of friends is a diminishing number as our careers develop. What is so special about the profession that feels that it can continue to treat the people that way? And we have to certainly be asking ourselves the question as to whether it can continue. So next question I've got for you is, what is your perception of time? And of course, we've got the picture of Einstein there and about some of the ideas he had about time, and the theory that if you approach the speed of light and travel away from the Earth and you come back to Earth, you will have changed much less than the people back on Earth. How you will have experienced time will be different for you. And it's an important point at how we think about time, and time as an objective fact is something which is a little bit different. And the great thing about it is how we think about time is something that we can get more control of if we know how, whereas the simple passing of time we cannot necessarily control. So the Greeks actually had two different words, one which was chronos, which was chronological time, and the other one kairos, which is the idea of subject time. And expressions like a watch kettle never boils sum up the experience of my own when I had my daughter, who was very young, and she used to participate in music events. I remember going to a theatre where all the different music groups used to give their performances, which used to last about 3.5 hours, an extraordinary length of time, it seems, especially since there was an awful lot of rocking and so on going on. The signs weren't always beautiful, from especially at the earliest level. But then when it came to my daughter's 5-minute bit when orchestra was on, that 3.5 hours of being in that hot, stuffy theatre and having to listen to not the most beautiful music all fell away when it got to that point. So it's about managing your time is a key, of course, but it's also managing your thoughts about time and your perception about time to restore this control. And if you look at this next one, this is a week in the life of a lawyer and a list of things to do. If you look at what I would like you to just imagine is how this would look. And I don't think it's a hugely onerous week's activity. And actually, when you look at it, in this format, it doesn't look like such a horrendous set of things to do. But if you imagine that being simply a random list, a to-do list, if you like, if you can imagine it, you can see how your sense of control, the sense of order of things starts to fall away. And that is something which you have to be able to learn the techniques to get control over. And one of the ways to do it is using visual aids like calendaring or organizing of the ideas or the task, as it is in this case, in a structured kind of way. Now, I'm going to look at a particular case study in a moment of two different people who have exactly the same things on their plate on a Monday morning. Both of them come into the office on a Monday morning with a plan to do a very substantial piece of client work, which requires a lot of focus and attention. Both of them have the an associate who has a problem which comes up on one of those files and needs some help and support on it. Both of them get interrupted by a new piece of urgent work which comes in just at the time when they're starting on that substantial piece of work that they'd scheduled in for that morning. And both of them had made a promise to their partner that it would be an early departure that evening. They were going to be getting away from the office by 5 o'clock because it was their turn on bathing of the kids' duty. Now, partner one, how did she react? Well, first of all, there was already a sense of foreboding as she sat down and she looked at a list of things to do. It was kind of staring back at her in an accusing way when she gets in there on Monday. And then she had this big piece of client work which had been getting towards slipping and hadn't got done. She thought, oh my goodness, I've got to get this sorted this morning. The response when the new urgent piece of work from a top client came in was a kind of fight or flight response. It had a really bad effect on her concentration. She did shift to do the new urgent task, but took quite a while to get focused on it and absorb all the information. And then she was almost relieved when the associate came in with a significant problem on their particular case. And she spent another 45 minutes trying to help that person sort out their issue and advise them on the correct legal response. She got through to 5 o'clock and realized that the promise to be leaving early on this particular day wasn't going to be materialized. So a sheepish phone call followed back to the partner who's at home to say, I'm not going to be able to do it tonight, sorry, and left the office for about 7 o'clock. And that was her experience of it. So contrast that with the experience of partner two. Now, partner two's approach was quite different. She had already had a review on Friday of the things that she had to do previously. And then when she'd arrived on the Monday morning, the first part of her day had been spent adjusting plans that were already partly formulated. Although she started off with brainstorming a list of things to do, she'd already started to structure it by using her calendar. And she'd included things like her personal stuff, that getting back to bath the kids was one of the personal things which were to her just as important as the things that she had to do as a fee earner and partner. By the time she was sat down and ready to go for the week and this new urgent piece of work came in, she wasn't thrown to nearly the extent that the other person was, because she knew that she had factored in some contingency time in her planning anyway. Also, she wasn't interrupted by the associate because she had an understanding with those who reported to her that there was a certain type of day and that short of a fire alarm or something like that, she was not to be interrupted during certain times of the day when she had focus time. And when she got to the 5 o'clock, she was ready to leave, but just before she left, she did some reorganization. It was just a case of doing some tweaks to the rest of the planning for the week. So she was able to leave, and that was the serene look that she had on her face during the day. So one of the key things coming out of that I would like to emphasize is that making your calendar your friend, so using a calendaring approach rather than a listing type of approach is a really important part of getting that sense of control, getting that sense of structure. And I haven't got into the details of how she did it in partner two's case, but that was a key part of what she was doing. In that process, making sure that you give the importance that you should to your highly focused tasks that require great concentration, and also that you don't neglect the personal stuff, make that just as important for you. And the sort of second thing coming out of that is really this point that it is all in the mind and your perception of time, your perception of the demands upon you and how you can manage it, which is something which there are techniques to do to avoid going into the panicky fight or flight response, or rather to recognize that natural reaction when you're put under pressure of trying to retreat in yourself, trying to avoid the problem, being distracted therefore buy it. There are ways that you can spot yourself doing that, rise above it, and the stress can be dissipated. And that's really key to being able to manage your time in the dynamic situation of the law firm environment, where you get risk of interruption and you get the experience of multitasks being necessary to be completed over the course of your week. And I'm going to look at some of the typical things which come up as problems, and I've classified them as 7 deadly sins of time management. And we're going to look at each of these themes, and I'm going to give you some practical tips of how to avoid the temptation, if you like, when it comes to this stuff. And so we're going to go to the first one. No is the hardest word. So a survey by Law Care, this was in the UK, found that 65% of lawyers check their emails outside work. Also, 28% of lawyers also feel that the need to be available to their clients 24/7. So one of the hardest words for a lawyer to utter is certainly no. Even more difficult, it's a kind of related thing, is to say, I need help, because it seems to us like it might be an admission of failure. So you may think that cheerfully accepting an additional task to help out will do no harm, but at a certain point, stress levels start to rise, and productivity also. So for partners, of course, this means avoiding taking on things which could actually be delegated. I myself remember coming in at a weekend when there was a trial coming up, and I had to sort out some issues with the disclosure. And the reason it was me who was doing that was because I was guilty of not having delegated at a much earlier stage with clear enough instruction. So if I had allocated time which had not the time seemed worth allocating to this, I wouldn't have been in the situation of having to deal with these issues. So basically, there was no one to blame for me and no one else to blame for me not doing the music lesson run at the weekend. And of course, I had to fess up to that. For more junior lawyers, the key is the confidence to communicate to a partner on their work priorities if a news comes in. And so the moral is to learn to say no to yourself in a compassionate way and to colleagues in a professional way, and to all partners, for pity's sake, delegate. So that's sin 1. Sin 2, my door is always open. Well, as a law firm partner, I took the open door policy to extremes, spending all day, save for actual meetings, in an open plan office, email inbox open, smartphone umbilically attached to me. But research by a Professor Gloria Marsh of the University of California indicated that it takes an average of 23 minutes, and that's not seconds, that's minutes. If you're working on a high focus type of piece of work, it takes 23 minutes to refocus after an interruption. So if you're one of the majority of lawyers who are interrupted over 6 times a day, and this is survey material I'm referring to, and in fact 25% of us are interrupted more than 10 times a day, that adds up to an awful lot of minutes of lost concentration. Whether you look at it as 130 plus minutes or 15 hours a week, 15 billable hours, you might think of it, or 15 hours that you're not spending with your loved ones, that is an awful lot of lost time. So my tips in this are having focus time calendar in each day for high concentration tasks or projects where nothing short of a fire alarm or can interrupt you. Polish your professional, not right now, but later, message to a colleague if they're trying to collar you on something. Don't overcram your schedule so that tasks spill into each other. Make sure that your calendar is your buddy and that you have contingency in that. It mustn't be your stirrer of stress. Stop interruptions. So make sure that your do not disturb and your focus assist functions are working. If you are blessed to have an assistant, have a clear understanding of when you need to focus and what the special exceptions to the do not disturb rule are going to be. Another thing is adopting an approach to tasks of, you may have heard about the Pomodoro technique. This is really where you divide an hour's work up into 20 minutes of really intense bursts of concentration, followed by 5 minutes of break, and then another 25 minutes. It's a much more effective way to be productive during periods of high focus. So 25 minutes, 5-minute break, 25 minutes, 5-minute break, the Pomodoro technique, something worth looking up. Now, moving on to Sin 3, in search of a lost time. So we're not going on to a diversion into the world of Marcel Proust here, but this is about lawyers shooting themselves in the foot. Yes, that is something we do on a daily basis, and we do it particularly in the area of estimates of time and capture of time when it comes to the recording of time. And with alternative fee arrangements, this is no less of a problem. Why we do it? Various reasons, partly practical, partly psychological. There's an element of self-censorship. There's an element of being sometimes too kind to the client. There's an element of selling yourself too cheap, not being confident about your value. And maybe that's something which at the more junior level in careers, that's a particularly common problem. And in fact, there was a study of 100 lawyers by the American Psychological Association. This was the lawyers actually were based in Israel in this case. And 20% of them admitted that if they were pushing up against the top of their fee estimate range, they would report fewer hours than they actually worked. Now, what was this? Misplaced generosity? Was it not wishing to appear foolish? Was it kind of dishonestly trying to appear more honest, if you like, to get my paradox from earlier on? Take your pick. But this approach doesn't serve your clients because the financial planning is part of the service that you're delivering to the client. So if you're pushed up against your estimate, it could have an impact on service as well. Of course, it's not good for the firm, loss of accurate data recovery, and of course, difficulty with not being able to bill the clients the full amount. So the level of recovery on a particular matter would be below the actual hours spent on it. And then, of course, with the individual, we're looking at stress and even reputation as being the issue. So why are lawyers not good at estimating time? The answer to that generally is that because we don't as much attention and focus on the problem of estimating time as on the delivering of the legal side of things, but the mentality change to it being part of the service, part of client care is a key message, I would say. What are my tips on this? My tips are break down the project into smaller tasks. Use your experience of similar projects from the past. Also, talking to colleagues, getting input from your team on how these things typically work. Ensuring you do capture all of your time and that your team is properly trained to do that sense. Of course, you have to consider the resources and the availability of delegation. You need to allow for contingencies when you're costing a job, and you need to be reviewing it at regular intervals and updating the client, of course, as well, which assists with the question of recovery. In certain cases, a costs draftsman's input can be useful, but even if you are not in the habit of using a draftsman, developing the cost draftsman mentality is hugely beneficial. It's something which litigators in our jurisdiction have improved quite a bit because they've been forced to as a result of the Wolf reforms, where the judiciary took a very skeptical view of the way in which which time was recorded by lawyers, with taking the view, Lord Wolfe always took the view that it rewarded inefficiency, the time recording system as the basis of billing. What it does do is, if you're asking yourself the question about what needs to be done to progress the matter at each stage, as a costs draftsman would do, also bearing in mind what a court would accept if you were making an application for costs, that's a really helpful approach, and something we did in my firm. What we used to get some of our cases funded by insurers, and we would somebody in to talk to us about the ways of recording time would maximize the chances of fully recovering the costs and not having a challenge when it came to putting the claim in. And then appropriate technology is my final point on this one. Time record systems, training people up on the use of it. I dream that AI will bring us better systems to help with the estimation of costs, because it's one of the areas it could make a great contribution. So let's see if that happens to a greater extent in the future. So that's technology. Moving on then to the sin for the growing too difficult part, or in other words, what we're talking about here is procrastination, which affects us all to some extent. Now, here you are, another survey for you. Reboot Online. On average, lawyers spend 67 minutes a day on activities other than work. This survey also found, made me feel a bit smug about this, that accountants actually spend 87 minutes on average a day. So we can pat ourselves on the back for being a little bit more efficient from our professional rivals in the accounting profession, but at the same time, it's not a great result. Why do we do this? Why does it happen? My particular version of this was to give myself too much time. Earlier start in the morning, Sunday morning. Sorry, kids, daddy's busy type of scenario. Deadline dependency was another aspect of it. All very well and good getting things done until the deadlines approach. It's very natural and human. But what happens when they all converge at once, which is frequently the case when it comes to our profession? Perfectionism. Now, accuracy in legal work is vital, but the platonic ideal of client advice email is distraction, of course, technology, other people, the aroma of coffee. They all conspire to distract. The where do I start syndrome. The more you think about a task, the bigger the task looks. What are my tips on avoiding this sin? Well, first of all, scheduling your tough tasks first thing. Mark Twain had a little saying, which was, if your jobs for the day involve eating 2 frogs, make sure you eat the larger of the 2. So eating your larger frogs, reducing your to-do list, so focusing on the urgent and scheduling the less urgent, and delegating where you possibly can. Use a scheduling approach rather than just listing, but allowing the contingency time. Break the task down into chewable chunks and use bursts of focus followed by a break. What we've mentioned before, again, the Pomodoro method coming back. And again, avoiding those distractions, turn off, disconnect, and polite do not disturb messages. So that's sin 4. Moving on to the next sin. Sin 5 takes longer to explain than to do it yourself. In other words, delegation. So thinking about delegation. Now, without it, it's been found charges can be as much as 15% too high. And coming back to our jurisdiction, where you get scrutiny of costs if you're seeking payment of the other side to pay your costs, this is something where you often get markdowns because of the failure to delegate. Charges can be 15% too high. That's what surveys have shown. But when it comes to delegation, one thing is certain: dumping is not delegation. I remember a situation with a partner that I work with whose idea of delegation was to pass a new hefty matter in an area which was not within the comfort zone of most of the lawyers within the firm on one of our brightest junior lawyers. And off he went to sip his pina coladas, basically by saying, can you look after this while I'm away for a week? That was pretty well the subtotal. of the handover. The result of this was that when it came to Monday morning, I had this solicitor in tears in my office. I had to spend pretty well the whole morning getting to grips with the matter to give the necessary support. And it was a big matter. It wasn't one which she was experienced in. And so I had to give the additional input, which should really have been given previously. Part of it was about dealing with things on a contingency basis, but even dealing with the case in a fundamental way meant that proper delegation was necessary. So the process you would follow, well, why delegate? First of all, you're freeing up the partner for the higher value work. And it's hard to lead while you're lost in the minutiae of the file for the duration of a large matter. Or maybe it's just for self-interest that you want to do it to get that vacation without ripples on the surface of your pina colada. What do you delegate? Analyze the complexity versus the importance. And depending on the strengths, capacity of the team, certain matters should be delegated, like low urgency, low complexity matters. Things that urgent and complex probably should not be delegated. But with many complex matters, there will be elements that are delegable and elements that are not suitable for it. When it comes to the who, then it involves evaluating the strength and experience of course. And the how is crucial to the effectiveness. So doing it early rather than late is ideal. And I refer you back to my story about being in on Sunday on a particular case. So time invested early is likely to save time. The quality and clarity and guide are always going to be key. The appropriate level of supervision without micromanaging the junior person also comes into it. On a final note, please resist the "it will be quicker if I do it myself" fallacy. That is a short-term fix for the time poor part. Your time management will make no progress. Moving on, otherwise known as perfectionism, if you like. Now, having my first advice letter, in my words, or the thoughts going through my head, was torn to shreds, or in the words of my supervising partner, a couple of tweaks here, Jonathan, set me on a path to trying to get my communications flawless going forward. And I was driven by a fear of failure in a world in which accuracy is, of course, a top priority. But like many lawyers, I procrastinated and sacrificed clarity in some cases on the altar of precision, and sometimes and later hesitated for fear of losing control. I realized that if I focused on the client's actual needs, which were for prompt, accurate and practical guidance, the platonic ideal of client advice faded into its rightful place, the ether. So getting that perfect smile, copying Leonardo at a perfectly enigmatic smile is not what we're looking for. Aiming actually to help our clients over the next hurdle in their matter. And that's a practical thing. Technology will not displace lawyers. So the threat of AI, of course, or some will say the threat, some will say the opportunity of AI is here and with us. 49% of in-house counsel expect outside counsel to use generative AI. Well, that's a survey done about a year ago, and the expectation is that those who are delivering the services from the private sector need to be supporting the service that they give with AI, and the in-house counsel will be driving that change. So that challenge has to be embraced by us, and it's going to be a necessity to be able to reduce time when it comes to researching, drafting, analysis, even due diligence, business development activity, understanding new legal concepts, litigation strategies, cost estimate, one of my particular things that I mentioned earlier. Well, how good is the AI in the area of law? We've heard about, there was a New York case, didn't we, where there were the problem of hallucination came in with somebody citing a entirely fictitious case in the court and getting slapped down for it. And it's happened over here as well. I know the developments in this area have been impressive. It says, for example, using AI tools in a closed system where you don't have the same risk of hallucinating are making significant progress. And so we need to embrace it, and we need to be training ourselves and our teams on it. So next point, how can coaching help with these kinds kind of issues? Well, a couple of general points on why coaching is helpful is very much on an individual basis. You can work with someone who starts exactly where you are, and it's about building on existing success, very much aimed at high achievers, very much a personalized support with someone who is not judgmental, but also can bring accountability in that safe space with someone with a similar professional background. So there's some general points about coaching can help with time management more generally. And I just wanted to say that I can also help specifically with time management, helping with a practical method involving downloading your time and then organizing it, using a process of devoting time to scheduling and planning on Monday, hour one, reviewing on Friday at the end of the day, and daily modification. So that's a sort of approach that I can use, and also talk about the techniques that you can use to improve your relationship and increase your control over time. And I've got a special offer, hopefully will be of interest to you, which I've put in at very much a special offer price here, which is a special session with me, one-to-one session on controlling your time, and 375 GBP, 465 USD, and it's very much a practical session, and I'm sure you'll be able to benefit from it immediately in your professional life. So that's my special offer on controlling your time. Just a word on my more general offering, which is my program for growing your practice, whether it's your practice as a whole or your partnership practice within the firm on a career basis, 4 stages, planning for success. So where do you want to go, and putting together the strategy to get there, the practical steps, looking at the issues that come up with people, leadership and management, looking at the personal skills you need to develop and the personal mindset. So upgrading the past partner toolkit, as I've mentioned, and then pulling it together into a leadership roadmap. So both of those options, particularly great. So coming near to conclusion, the old chestnuts that we have to face when it comes to time and time management comes with the territory of the work. Yes, it does, but there are a lot of people moving to other territories, and this is something law firms have to remember. People are moving into fee share firms, for example, where they have much more control over their time. Now, it's not necessary to make that drastic move, and it's not right for everyone, though that option is there, because getting control of your time is something that you can do with some work, and particularly if you can get some support as well. The other one, Jonathan, if you can find me more than 24 hours in a day, take away my responsibility for young kids and find me the resources I don't have, then you'll be able to help me. Well, that is a direct quote from someone I engaged with. Fortunately, the good news is it isn't true. You don't need those extra hours in the day if you can get a grip and control of your time. So please continue to hold on to those beliefs. That's all for today. I've got time. If anybody has any other questions they wanted to put to me, very happy to stay on for a minute or two. Otherwise, thank you very much for attending today.